I'm here. And first, I want to say thank you to everyone who stuck around for the end of the season. You guys are the reason that this show exists, the reason that we can bring these stories to life, and the reason we can keep going. So thank you. I also want to say a special thank you to our top-tier patrons who help us out every month, as well as those of you who chip in with one-off donations. If you want to join them, you can find links down below. We love you all. Now, to recap what happened last time, our heroes just helped lead the galaxy's greatest fleet to a decisive victory against a technologically superior opponent. In the immediate aftermath, they got famous. They got rich, or at least the galaxy tried to buy them. And they caught the attention of every politician, pundit, and profiteer within a light year. So as the crew of the Elk settles into its new routine, there are a lot of questions in the air. How will this victory reshape the galaxy? What does it mean for humanity? Will our heroes get a statue or something? Okay, maybe that last one isn't important. But as the galaxy begins to react to the events of the Battle of the Shepherd's Eye, the crew of the Ilk must deal with the consequences of their actions, both good and bad. The Ilk herself, with her dents and dings and scorch marks, had become a relic. The Galactic newsfeed looped battle footage for days on end. Analysts dissected trajectories, and commentators argued whether the Ilk's crew had committed a war crime or delivered a necessary truth. Captain Vega wrestled with the fallout of Boomer's plan to overload the Vardani flagship, a move that saved lives but destroyed a magnificent ship that the galaxy had once admired. The Vardani, for their part, presented a united, if furious front. Across dozens of systems, politicians that once smiled politely at Earth's delegation drafted letters with trembling hands. They requested instructors, for training packages, for the schematics of railways and EMP thermoses, basically everything that made the Elk effective. All because they wanted a piece of that sweet vengeance. At the Galactic Tribunal, what began as an emergency session quickly unraveled into something more personal than procedural. General Kov, his career defined by flawless victories and perfect rhetoric, pushed for sanctions, for the disarmament of the Ilk, reprisals, a formal apology, and plenty of heads on pikes. The Vardani press wanted heads, the Vardani Council wanted someone to blame. But the political apparatus that had once polished Kov's speeches also saw opportunity. Merchant cliques smelled profit, military academies saw training contracts, small world governors saw leverage. Blame, in the tribunal's hands, became bargaining chips. Kov threatened war, and seen hands whispered peace for a price. The emergency session, meant to punish, turned into a brokered convoy of favors where every concession had a ledger. On Earth, that distant blue pin of a home, the reaction was quieter, layered with old fatigue and new alarm. News anchors who had once joked about Earth's primitive fleet now found themselves in front of glass walls full of charts and offers. Earth Command scrambled to draft policy, how to accept aid, how to sell services, how critically to refuse empirehood. Veterans argued in cluttered halls about whether victory on a single day justified a lecture tour across the stars. Vega watched all of it through a different lens. Victory didn't feel like victory to him. It felt like a price that would come due later. The galaxy hadn't changed. It had just been given a crash course in humility. Men and ships lined up on video channels begging for training, for commissions, for seats on a new advisory council. Corporations offered to build human ships on Vardani designs. Academies offered to put humans on payroll teaching primitive warfare. Everywhere. Profit threatened to turn defense into exportable doctrine. Meanwhile, back on the Elk, Vega gathered his crew together for a rare moment of quiet. What we did was defensive, he told them. We reminded them how physics works. His voice was steady, but when he unfastened his old Earth fleet patch and smoothed it on his shoulder, there was a small, private movement in his hands. Doubt or resolve. The galaxy, it seemed, was ready to believe in human resilience, but no one was sure how long that belief would last. The Vardani, however, were far from broken. Their pride had been wounded and would not heal quickly. Their secret weapon, after all, had been stolen, leaving them vulnerable to imitators. Some Vardani called for uncompromising retaliation, a purge of the tribunal's leadership to reassert order. Others, smarter, colder, recommended adaptation, study human rotting techniques, integrate kinetic counters, tune shields for mass effect. The council split along that practical vein, and in the cracks, older rivalries widened. Kov himself became a figurehead for vengeance and, in quiet corridors, a convenient scapegoat. A few months after the battle, he led an inspection team aboard the Elk to ensure compliance with the tribunal's disarmament orders. His posture was stiff and his eyes were sharp. No one invited him aboard, so he stood on the ramp with the rest of the gawkers. He even allowed Boomer to give him a quick rundown of the ship's systems before quietly giving orders to his aides to study every system. The Elk was a blunt instrument, but it worked. By the time the tribunal issued its verdict, it was a compromise that satisfied no one, a diplomatic rebuke here, a monitored disarmament there, and a curious clause about joint training exchanges that, more than anything, ensured continuous interaction. Interaction, Vega acknowledged, would change everything. The galaxy that had been comfortable in its hierarchies had been reminded that a blunt object, used by someone who knows how to aim it, could topple gilded assumptions. People who had laughed at Earth now whispered to one another about redundancy, about deceit, about the danger of betting the future on algorithms that can't imagine the wrong kind of threat. And in the quiet hum beneath the politics, something else shifted, a market blossomed for human instructors. Shadow merchants offered unauthorized primitive weapon clones. Underground labs reverse-engineered rods and EMP devices for buyers who had no moral qualms. Yelena hated it. She blocked a dozen such offers with a dry, efficient strike across her tablets. Knowledge without stewardship becomes a blade, she told Vega once. He nodded. He preferred blunt words to elegant philosophy. Meanwhile, the galaxy rushed to adapt. The Vardani, eager to avoid embarrassment, drew up standards for human weapons. Anyone who could prove compliance got access to official schematics. Soon, knockoffs of the Elk dotted the inner systems, hulking ships cobbled together from armored plating and busted mining lasers. Most were terrible. Some were ingenious. The best were terrifying. Even so, no one dared test them in earnest. But as the galaxy grew braver, Vega got a message that froze his blood. It came from an address he recognized, a subchannel used decades earlier for a classified contingency file. The header read, "Nevada deploy activate if tribunal fails." The message contained coordinates, a list of hardened bunkers, patent numbers, and a single line of plain text at the end, "If we are judged by our elegance, remind them of noise." Vega stared at the line until the letters blurred. "What's under Nevada?" Boomer asked, leaning over his shoulder. Vega did not smile. He was not surprised. He had a suspicion he had never voiced aloud. "There are things," he said slowly, "we built in case the pretty rules stopped protecting us. Old physics, older grudges. If the galaxy wants to learn a lesson, they might find we have more than rod and thermos." His tone was not a boast but a warning. Across the Gulf, the Vardani repaired and recalibrated. Humans trained, commercially and clandestinely, in systems that wanted both the lesson and the leverage it offered. The Elk crew was celebrated, studied, and sometimes feared, a small, dangerous celebrity in a galaxy that preferred predictability. But some nights, when comms were quiet and the ship creaked as it cooled, someone would press a hand to the viewport and look out at the dots of light that had always been home. Ryan, the boy who'd been slapped, kept touching his swelling and tapping through public reactions with an odd detachment. He had not sought fame. He had not sought vengeance. He had only been a kid in a hall of gods. Now people talked about him as if he had something prophetic in his stillness. He smiled sometimes, a small, private thing, and returned to training. "Don't let this make you gods," Yelena said once, late, to the crew. "We survived the day." Survival is not a mission statement. Vega looked at the navigation map that traced Earth's quiet blue. He tapped the point labeled Nevada and then blinked away from the screen. "This was a warning," he said, "not an invitation." He drank coffee that tasted like reconstituted night and, with a half smile, added, but the lesson is ours to decide. Out beyond the map, in the silent orbit where the Vardani had once glided like a procession of crowns, the shards of their fleet drifted. The galaxy had been shifted on its axis by something unpretty and incontrovertible. For a moment, the veneer had cracked and something truer, messy, improvisational, and human bled through. That wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a negotiation the galaxy had not wanted, between aesthetics and effectiveness, between algorithms and scars, between trading in appearances and trading in survival. And under Nevada, somewhere on a dusty, forgotten strip of a planet that had always been America and always been a testing ground, there were bunkers, blueprints, and quiet explosives of a kind that do not photograph well on holo tabloids. So that's it for Season 4 of The Long Way Home. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. And if you want to see more from us, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.